This story comes from the pages of the one-shot comic Spider-Man and Batman. Please support the official release. The story begins where we see a hardened criminal brandishing a gun as he viciously slaughters an innocent man. This man being none other than Ben Parker, as a horrified May Parker watches on. Immediately a window would shatter, where a vengeful Spider-Man would leap through and slam the burglar against the wall, where instead of being filled with fear like most criminals, he would begin to laugh. A laugh that would become louder and louder, where his face would distort and morph to that of the Joker. This, of course, would be a nightmare, where we'd see a horrified and extra shredded and handsome-looking Peter Parker awaken, saying that he had been suffering from this dream for months on end. His wife Mary Jane would then ask if he was alright, where he'd respond by telling her that he needed to clear his head. Knowing her husband better than anyone, MJ told Peter where his costume was so he could go out for a late night swing, but made him promise to be home for breakfast before falling back to sleep. Man, 90s Spider-Man was the best. You guys actually remember when Peter Parker actually had a good life for once and was in a happy relationship? Good times, man. Good times. Suiting up and swinging out into the New York skyline, Spider-Man would reflect on the good woman that Mary Jane was, and if it weren't for her and the likes of Uncle Ben and Aunt May raising him, he wondered just what kind of man he would have become. All that he knew was that he would strive every day to be a better man and live up to the example his loved ones had set for him. In the very next scene, we'd be greeted by yet another mirror-identical scenario where we'd witness yet another man brandish a gun and open fire. This man being Joe Chill, as he looked over the murdered Thomas and Martha Wayne, all while a horrified Bruce Wayne would look on. Suddenly, a fully grown Batman would emerge and slam the man against the wall, and similar to Uncle Ben's murderer in Spider-Man's dream, Joe too would begin to laugh, where instead of turning into the Joker, he would turn into the Crimson serial killer known as Carnage. Awakening from the dream, an equally jacked Batman would awaken, where instead of being comforted by a hot supermodel wife like MJ, he was greeted by Alfred, who asked the man if he was alright. But nothing against you, Alfred. You're great, bro, but you're not 90s Mary Jane, man. Also suiting up and going out for a night on the town, Bruce thought back to Alfred, thanking God for him being the father figure in his life, for it weren't for his love, he would have turned into something much darker. Later that night at the Ravencroft Institute, we would see the real Carnage, Cletus Cassidy, locked in a powerful containment field as he was studied by a Dr. Ashley Kafka. She had called Spider-Man in on this night for they were transporting the symbiotic serial killer to another wing of the hospital and needed him as backup. Cassidy would then taunt the doctor and give his usual psychotic ramblings on how he'd do unspeakable things to her if he were to escape, with the good doctor believing his escape to be impossible, given that his cell was custom built for him. However, she soon realized that with Carnage all things were possible, where he'd shatter his cage and lunge at the woman, vowing to make her blood flow out of her like wine. Luckily though, the doc's plans to have Spidey there proved quite useful, as the dude engaged the monster, giving the guards an opening to blast them with their microwave guns, knocking him and the symbiote unconscious. Breathing easy now that they survived, at least for now, Dr. Kafka went to have her men bring Carnage back into custody, where she was then interrupted by another woman. This woman being a Dr. Cassandra Breyer, who revealed herself as a behavioral psychologist acting on behalf of the US government. She would rudely belittle Kafka, believing her efforts to cure Carnage of his insanity to be an utter failure, and was here to take over this operation. Having her men restrain Cassidy, she would then explain that she had made a breakthrough in her research and had created a chip that she planned to implant into the man's head. It would then alter his brainwaves to the point where it would make him a timid, docile man, effectively curing him. Believing this to be inhumane as it would turn Cletus into basically a mindless zombie, Dr. Kafka argued with Dr. Breyer, who saw this viewpoint as irrelevant, saying that it was the small price to pay given the countless innocents Carnage had killed and how many more this would save. Sorry hot dark-haired doctor lady, but I'm gonna have to go with the hot blonde doctor lady on this one. Still take you out for coffee though, babe. Looking on as Cletus was strapped to the operating table, even Spider-Man argued that this may be immoral, where Breyer immediately snapped back, saying this was not up for debate, and despite all of the wall crawler's great power, he too was a failure in stopping Cassidy. But now with her at the helm, Carnage would finally be stopped on this night. Fully restrained against the cold metal lab table, the horrified Cletus would watch on as his surgery would commence. While Carnage basically got Leonardo DiCaprio like the ending of Shutter Island, we'd be taken over to Gotham City, where we'd see the Joker, dressed like a literal circus clown this time, who was rather proud of his latest plan. This plan being a cage full of virus-infected bats, which he planned to unleash upon the city to start an outbreak that would drive everyone crazy. Bro, when was this story written? Hold on. 1997? You're telling me the Joker predicted COVID back in the 90s? Joker Illuminati confirmed, boys? Not about to let Gotham get 2020 just yet, Batman arrived to the scene, delivering a sweet flying face kick right to the clown Prince of Crime. Vowing to never let something like this happen to his city, Bruce gave the clown one last chance to come along quietly, where of course Joker being Joker, could not help himself and rather romantically bit the man right on the neck, where he was immediately backhanded unconscious by the Dark Knight. So, COVID bats and Joker x Batman fanfiction all within 2 pages of a comic in the 90s? What were these writers on, bro? After Batman would take Joker to Arkham Asylum later that night, we would see that the Madman had also been under close study by Dr. Breyer, who consulted with Dr. Arkham, believing that Joker would be the next prime candidate for her brain-altering surgery. Arkham, not fully convinced of such a procedure until it had proven results, was quickly reassured, where Breyer and her men brought in the now fully reformed Cletus Cassidy, who is now a harmless, timid shell of his former self. So timid that he was too scared to even look the good doctor in the eye. All in all, he was now a cured man, ready to be admitted back into society. After witnessing the chip's ability to conquer even the mighty Carnage, Dr. Arkham gave the full authority for this surgery to be immediately performed upon the Joker, ridding the world of 2 of its greatest killers. We later see that Joker's surgery was also successful, resulting in the Clown Prince of Crime being turned into the Pauper of Peace, as he and Cletus were both paraded in front of onlooking crowds as part of a media campaign advertising Dr. Breyer's success. The media, also questioning the morals of this, asked if this was a new wave of fascism in modern clothing, where Breyer reassured them that this was not the case. This procedure was meant only for the irredeemable, most ruthless criminals, that way they can become functional members of the modern world, granting a feeling of security to the people that they would no longer have to fear the night. After the press conference, we'd see Dr. Breyer and her men on their drive back home, where her driver would admit that he was rather nervous on account that they had 2 of society's most insane murderers in the back seat. The woman would then calm the man down, saying there was no reason to fear them anymore, for her chip works, and there was no chance of this horror ever returning. The doctor would immediately go to eat these words, where she'd witnessed the driver be impaled with a blade from behind. His chest would then immediately be torn open, where the horrified Breyer would witness a now fully transformed Carnage. The madman would then explain that he had been himself for quite some time. In fact, it was immediately after the surgery that his symbiote detected and removed the chip in his brain. All this time he put on a great show of acting cured, so he could lure the Doctor right into this moment where he would torture and kill her, and then make his explosive entrance back into the world. Causing the car to crash, Cassidy would then emerge with Briar as his hostage, where she then warned the man that her guards had their microwave guns and would burn him to a crisp. Carnage, more in character than ever before, said he could care less, for if they even moved an inch, he would immediately kill her right before them. Seeing that they were at a standstill, the troopers asked what they should do, where their commander would tell them to stand down, for he would take care of this alone. While this would be very brave of Dr. Phil with hair to say, we would see that things were not all as they seemed, where the man would then tear his face off, revealing that it had been Batman in disguise the whole time, who was prepared to take the alien menace down. The Dark Knight would then tell the monster to let the woman go and come after him if he were looking for someone to kill, where Carnage would then retort, saying that unlike Batman's usual enemies, he was not obsessed with him, and would kill him and the Doctor alike, for they were nothing more than bloody meatbags to him. That's so Carnage too, bro. Absolutely would not care about Batman one bit. Cletus is absolutely despicable, but you kinda can't help but love this guy. Before he could harm anyone, Carnage soon heard a familiar thwip right behind him, where Briar was snatched out of his clutches and into the arms of Spider-Man, who sarcastically remarked that he was glad the villain was back, for he kinda missed that beautiful killer smile of his. Using this opening, Batman would then engage the Beast, while the actually cured and mortified Joker would plead for his life, asking the hero to save him. While Bruce was actually managing to hold his own in the fight against the symbiotic psychopath, Peter would also join in on the fun and beat down upon the dude, who was rather sick of this, and fired a series of blades into the crowd of officers. Seeing that they were horribly wounded, both heroes sprang into action to save them, giving Carnage the time he needed to escape, and much to their horror, had realized Cassidy had taken the Joker with him in the commotion. After tending to the wounded, Batman had Spidey meet him aboard a rooftop, where he had the wall crawler explain himself and just what was he doing in his city. Explaining the situation with Carnage, Peter would be interrupted by Bruce, who told him that he wanted him gone immediately. Gotham was completely unlike New York, and did not want the young hero getting hurt. Batman? Have you seen Spider-Man's villains? Honestly, I love you, man, but I don't think you'd last a day against his rogues gallery. Meanwhile, I think he could clear your rogues gallery in a day. Most of them are just mentally ill and need a hug. Something Spider-Man would actually do. Spider-Man would then argue back, saying that he was not here to get in Batman's way. All he wanted to do was help, where Batman, being Batman, would then say that he did not want or need it, where he would then leap into the night sky, where Spidey would then say that regardless, he was getting his help anyway. That's my boy. Don't you ever change, Peter. Things would later be taken to an abandoned warehouse, where we'd see the still mortified Joker cornered by Carnage, who admitted that part of his plan in playing dumb was to get close to the clown. He was a big fan of his work, and would love for them to work together to see what kind of creative and glorious murder they could bring upon mankind. There was one small roadblock though, given that pesky little chip in Mr. J's brain, keeping him from who he truly was. This was just another Tuesday for Carnage though, who clearly used his skills from playing Surgeon Simulator, where he then straight up stuck his symbiotic tendrils up Joker's nose and up his brain, where he then, rather painfully, destroyed the chip. In a mere second, Joker's frown would turn upside down, where he'd be back to his jolly old self, wondering where he was and just what had happened to him, and most importantly, why was he wearing this hideous brown suit, admitting that he was much more fashionable than this. Also wondering just who the heck Carnage was, Joker did not care, for he thought the guy also had a great smile. He then grabbed his claw and used it to shred the suit to liven up his appearance, where he kindly asked his new friend how he liked his fit. Thinking this was genuinely hilarious, Carnage shook the crime lord's hand, saying that he understood the joke that life was utterly meaningless, and that madness was the only solution. He then told the man that they belonged together, where Joker, being glad to have met another chill guy just like him, completely agreed. Later on, we would see Bruce in the Batcave studying Carnage, admitting that he was actually somewhat fearful of the man. What scared him most about Cletus was his mind. The dark, unhinged nature of his psyche spoke to something deep within inside the Wayne, an almost infectious madness that, if left unchecked, could potentially make its way to the surface. Alfred would then graciously bring the man some sandwiches, and would remark that he too had been reading Carnage's files. An individual like him seemed to thrive off of nothing but pure chaos, a pattern of action so unpredictable that even the great detective skills of the Batman may have issue in predicting the whereabouts or next moves of someone like this. This then sparked an idea within the Dark Knight, who fired up the Batmobile. He knew there was only one person who could know how to deal with someone like this. This person, of course, being Spider-Man, who he was quite the jerk to just a few hours prior. We would then see our boy in red and blue swinging through the Gotham night skies, where he'd witness a man straight up about to kill a woman, where he'd thankfully save her just in the nick of time. The grateful citizen would then ask just what the man was doing so far out of New York, where he'd say he was here to visit a friend, where right on cue, Batman would show up in the Batmobile and tell the guy to get in, where, completely out of character, would actually say please. Meanwhile, we'd be taken to the Joker's lair, filled with comically large blocks with funny faces on them, where he'd happily show off his villainous new plans to his new homie Carnage. Turns out he still had some samples of his madness virus from before, which he sprayed into a series of jack-in-the-boxes, which he planned to donate to the Wayne Foundation, which would be sent to children for Christmas. That way, when the kiddos would open up their things on Christmas morning, they would be blasted with a magical dab of holiday Joker madness that would slowly kill them. This is so 1960s Joker coded, and I'm so here for it. Now, Carnage, however, was not nearly as thrilled with this plan as I was, where he said that it was stupid and a waste of time. Time they could be using to kill people right here and now. For once in his life, Joker may have found someone worse than him, where he thought just mindless immediate slaughter was distasteful and rather disgusting. Preparing his blade, Carnage told Joker he thought he had the stomach for this kind of thing, where the man then blasted away with his rocket-propelled cane, saying that it was not so much a question of stomach, rather it was style. He then proceeded to roast the poor guy, saying that any idiot could brutally kill people, but more sophisticated gentlemen such as himself were much more cunning and dignified with their villainy. Using a bunch of outdated 90s references that most of you watching probably wouldn't get, Joker basically then called Carnage basic, which infuriated the man, who lunged at the clown, only for him to escape through an underground hatch, which then led outside, where he activated his good old Joker bombs, blowing up the entire building with Cletus inside. Things then cut to Batman with Spider-Man riding shotgun in the Batmobile, where Bruce, in his own way, apologized to Peter for being rude from before, and that he needed his help in the war against Carnage. Spider-Man then accepted the apology, saying that this happens with most heroes, and they inevitably come back needing his help. In fact, he was waiting any day now for a call from Superman. Batman absolutely did not find this joke funny and glared at Spider-Man, who promptly apologized. Batman may be the only guy who can make a dude 20 times stronger than him scared and apologize to him. That's why he's the GOAT. Bruce then revealed that while Carnage was his old self again, the chip in his head was still there, just deactivated, and Dr. Breyer had it programmed to a very specific frequency, a frequency he was able to tune into and track the man down. The men then arrived and looked over the wreckage that was, up until about 5 minutes ago, Joker's hideout, where Spider-Man then located what appeared to be the crushed corpse of Carnage. Lifting the debris, Spider-Man looked over the body, but was wise to Cletus's tricks. This would not be enough to kill him, and was in fact the corpse of another person that Carnage had placed part of his symbiote on. We then see the real Carnage acknowledge Spidey's wisdom, but had this trap set for Batman, where he then took the hero captive. Somewhat inspired from Joker's insults from earlier, Carnage admitted that he needed to get a bit more theatrical with his killings. He then figured that what better way to start his journey into the arts than publicly killing Batman atop Gotham Tower at midnight. Hey man, there you go! Peak cinema right there, baby. The Psycho then warned Spider-Man not to interfere, for if he were to even take a single step forward, he would end the man's life. Bruce then responded that he was a dead man either way, and demanded for Peter to stop Cletus here and now, before it was too late. Before Spider-Man could decide on what to do next, all three men were interrupted by the voice of none other than the Joker, standing aboard a rooftop, who told Carnage that he absolutely was not killing Batman or killing the people of Gotham. That was his job, but, stylishly. He then presented another one of his jack-in-the-boxes filled with a virus, which he planned to use on each of them, starting the madness pandemic that would soon kill them all. Thinking that Joker was bluffing, Carnage realized this was not the case, where he was soon filled with the overwhelming dread of his own death. This fear being so great that it caused him to momentarily lose control of the symbiote. Being the tactician that he was, Batman then kicked the killer right in the head, where Spider-Man then used his webs to grab the virus box from Joker, who had to admit the wall crawler had great aim. In an awesome series of panels, we would see Batman beat Carnage to a literal bloody pulp, saying that like him, Carnage was once a frightened young boy, but unlike him, never grew up to be a man. Seeing that the jig was up, Joker attempted to flee from the scene, only for Spider-Man to hit him with his spider signal, which Joker could have sworn was copyright infringement. Enraged at the Joker for nearly starting the apocalypse, Peter came close to killing the man, who urged the hero to give in to his dark side and do it. Being the good man he was, Peter regained his composure, where he then rightfully backhanded the guy unconscious, saying that he had a reputation to live up to and to make his loved ones proud, a faith he would never betray. With both of their deadliest villains in custody, we'd later see Batman and Spider-Man perched upon a rooftop once more, where, this time, instead of arguing, they'd give each other a sick bro handshake, vowing to use their abilities to protect the innocent and strive every day to become better men.